So today on Miles from Main Street,
They could junk Star Tours too.
that gives you quite a bit of space to work with.
Audio Jungle.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get rid of it. Let's bulldoze it.
Amazing dark ride to put together. Just getting so excited right now. No, I did what I wanted to do. I'm done.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejados de las
This here's
puertas.
a wild ride
We are talking Indiana Jones, and we are going to try to reimagine this attraction.
I don't even know that I'm reimagining it. I might just tear it down and put something else there. But, I've been looking at this footprint, and it's a pretty big footprint that this one attraction is using. And I feel like we could do something else. But before we get into it, you know what I'm going to say. Get on out there and share the show with a friend. And also, leave us a review. It would really help us out.
Yeah, so this is one of my least favorite. Actually, honestly, I think it's my least favorite attraction at Disney. It's something that I think I've only seen once when I was a little kid. And so what we're talking about, I only said Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular in Hollywood Studios. It's basically just kind of it's remnants of the old Hollywood Studios that was all about movie making. So if you look at it like that, it's actually kind of cool. And there's a lot of stuff happening in there that is pretty cool, but it just doesn't feel like something that's constantly pulling me over to that side of the park to go experience that. Like I honestly, I haven't done it since I was a little kid, since like probably the one time I've ever done it. And it just doesn't have that pull for me that is pulling me over to that side of the park and experiencing that. So, it's definitely something that I think Disney needs to reimagine or just flatten, like Bryan said. But yeah.
Yeah, it is a fun show that I it took a long time for me to see it as well, and I did enjoy it when I saw it, but it's not something that, like you said, pulls me in. It's not something that I consider within my touring of that park. And it's hard for me to want to put anything too spectacular in there otherwise, though, because this park is just, as Molly would say on her show, banger after banger after banger. It's e-ticket attractions all over the place. And it's a really hard park to go through and do a day in, because it's just one line after one line after one line. And so it's nice to have a show like this that you can walk in and sit down. It is nice to have the Beauty and the Beast show. It's nice to have Frozen. But for me, I feel like Indiana Jones has run its course. The new movie didn't do as well as they had hoped. I thought it was going to do really well, but it didn't, and nobody's talking about it. And they're talking about putting something Indiana Jones in at Animal Kingdom, and if that's the case, I don't feel like this franchise is worthy of two separate places or two separate attractions. So that leaves room to remove Stunt Spectacular, whether it's a retheme into another show, or, as I have said, a bulldoze and rebuild. It's fun. I do get a kick out of it when I do watch it. But yeah, it's run its course.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so I'm going to kind of take the first step into this idea factory and share my idea, and I've actually had this idea for a while, and I'm not 100% sure there's enough room back there. Maybe Hollywood studios would need to kind of expand more in that area. But something that I think would go really well over there is a Radiator Springs, the same way that they have
Yeah.
set up in California Adventure. That would be amazing. That would make me so happy if they had something like that at Hollywood Studios. And that's just another amazing land to add on to these other amazing lands that they've kind of made in this park. You've got the Toy Story land, you've got Batu. Now they just need to add that Cars land. And so I think that would be really cool and a great addition. And honestly, I it makes me like you said, like banger after banger after banger. If they put a Radiator Springs Racers into that park, like just
Yeah.
oh my god, imagine what it would be like, what lines would be like at this park, because like that's another banger. Like I think Radiator Springs Racers is probably probably like the biggest ride at California Adventure right now. Um,
Oh yeah, for sure.
I can't think of another one. So yeah, but then it kind of makes you think, putting it into Hollywood Studios with everything else that they have there. Do you think that would be like the top ride all of a sudden, or do you think it would still be um like one of the Star Wars rides or something like that?
I think it would be probably one of the popular ones for a while. Um, but it's hard to beat Rise of the Resistance.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much to that ride attraction. I don't know that you can call Rise just a ride. It's so much more.
Mhm.
Um, I also don't know that they have the room to do an entire Cars Land. But like you were talking about the size of what's there, and if you take a look at Google Maps, and this is what I was doing, um, you can take a look and you see the size of what they have to use for just the Indiana Jones show, and it's not just the shell that's the covered seating area, but you've got greenery around that. If you look at the satellite view on Google Maps, there's greenery around that shell that can be repurposed. There is the whole backstage area that they store all of the stunt stuff,
Mhm.
um, that can be used. It's like this is a very large space for this one attraction, and I don't know what the throughput is on it, but I can't imagine that it's that much space and the throughput that they're getting or the capacity that they're getting out of it. I just don't think that's justifiable to have that big of a space being used for the amount of people they're getting. Anyway, if you take that and you also take Star Tours, which is right next to it, which is another problem child out there. Nobody seems to ride that ride anymore. It's always got a 10-minute wait, even on a busy day. It's busy if it's more than 10 minutes. But if you take those two attractions, it's the same size as Toy Story Land.
Mm.
So what do we have in Toy Story Land? We've got this awesome Slinky Dog coaster that everyone wants to get on. So I think there's room. Indiana Jones is about half of the size of Toy Story Land, like almost to a T. And that gives you quite a bit of space to work with. So when you're talking Radiator Springs, I would have to go and like measure that out. I don't think there's enough room for that though. But I don't know. I mean, we're talking about California that doesn't have room to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. And so Radiator Springs, they have kind of like that main drag, and then they have the um isn't it like Mater's cow? Like it's the roaming cars. that you can get on, and then they like move around. Um, and then it's Radiator Springs Racers. So it's really just kind of like those couple of attractions. I'm pretty sure. Oh no,
So it's Luigi's, and you got
yeah,
Tomater's
Luigi's, and then
Junkyard Jam.
yeah. So there's three. Well, honestly, pretty much the same as Toy Story technically. Um, but yeah, I mean, and having that thought of kind of including Star Tours into all of that, and I mean, that would make a lot of sense to kind of get rid of that Star Tours, since there is a Star Wars area all back there. Um,
Mhm.
so I honestly, I wonder if something like this is on Disney's radar already, that they're kind of already thinking of that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to take a look at um, what Radiator Springs looks like in California, and that would be pretty interesting to just kind of like plop that down in Hollywood Studios and
Right?
see if you could just make it fit.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how much room that takes up. Um,
You could also take out what about like the backlot express back there? You probably
I mean, yeah, that would.
yeah.
I didn't use that as. Was Backlit Express right next to? Maybe that was part of the deal too. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
from what I was looking at. But Backlit Express. I will never tell somebody to go eat there. Uh,
Hey, we the last time we went there, it wasn't terrible. Like we actually had some like decent food there, so it wasn't bad.
yeah, I
I
pulled
think
up the map again, and looking at it, I'm incorrect. It's not Star Tours that you would pull. It is Backlot Express.
Mhm.
So it'd be Indiana Jones and Backlot Express that you would take up. That is the size of Toy Story Mania, and Star Tours would be right next to it. So
Oh, well then they could junk Star Tours too. And then kind of like that I'm almost kind of, so what's in front of the lake with the dinosaur, Echo Lake? What's all of that stuff there in front of that? I know that there's a restaurant there that everybody loves. Um what is that called?
are you talking over by the lake? Are you talking like
Yeah.
50s prime time?
Yeah, there's like 50s prime time there, and then it like, if you follow all that down, it basically just takes you to Indiana Jones. I'm almost wondering if they pull all of that stuff out too, so that they've got that whole side of Hollywood studios to work with.
I think I think touching Echo Lake is going to be off the table. I think that it's iconic enough, and it's something that you need to have as part of the park. And it just kind of tear that out and put more ride in. I don't know that that's going to make the park flow very well. Um, that just my 2 cents. I don't know.
Yeah, you just love 50s prime time, don't you?
Never been there.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get rid of it. Let's bulldoze it.
But it is next to Hollywood and Vine, which it's
Mm.
all one building.
Oh yeah.
So then you're looking at getting into the main entrance, um, with that building. So
Now that I think about it,
you're really spreading out there. You're really getting a lot of
yeah.
space.
Now that I think about it though, what if we took that, like, all, because all of those buildings are connected. Hollywood and Vine, 50s prime time. It goes all the way down to that like area that they turned into an Indiana Jones museum at one point. Um which
Mm.
we never got to go check out. But what if they just like took all of that, and then all of a sudden that drag turned into Radiator Springs? They just like kind of kept that infrastructure moving in that way, and then that became the main drag of Radiator Springs.
I mean, it would work. Sure, I could see you doing something like that. Um, it's I'm gonna push back because I'm not a fan of making both coasts the same. I so I when they announced Star Wars was going in on both coasts, I wasn't a fan. Like, I want it to be a unique experience. Bringing Cars Land, yeah, it'd be great, but bringing it out here to me is not fun. I think that's a great experience to keep out there. They did that with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. You know, we got it here, and then they put it out there too. And you know, I don't remember what we were talking about, but you and I were having a chat, and I was trying to think of what's different between Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom, and I was having trouble finding things. You know, like Pirates, the experience is a little bit different. You know, there's that type of thing, but there's a lot of the same things: Space Mountain, Big Thunder, Haunted Mansion. You know, um, so I knowing that we've got Hollywood Studios, we've got Tower of Terror, we've got Rock and Roller Coaster, we've got these experiences that they don't get to have in Disneyland. I'm kind of wanting to keep it that way. Maybe it's selfish, I don't know, but I like having different experiences going on. And then
You are selfish.
yeah, and you know, now that I've traveled to California and I know what it takes, it does take a little bit more to travel from Wisconsin to California than it does to Florida, just because of the time change. It still is pretty easy to do, and it doesn't. I think it benefits the company better to have different experiences on the two coasts than to just have everything the same.
Yeah, and I mean, I would agree with that. I still think it would be awesome if if they had that out there at Hollywood Studios. Um, and I guess for me, for it being like the selfishness is that I want that out there. I don't want to have to go out to California to experience Radiator Springs. But I do get what you're saying, where it's kind of like each park has um, like the charm is the differences with everything. Like you're not going to find Animal Kingdom anywhere else. Like it's just going to be Animal Kingdom out in Orlando. So um, yeah.
So why don't we head towards what I'm thinking, if I could?
Okay, go for it.
um, all right. So when we came up with this idea, I spent some time thinking about what IP would work there, because that's the ultimatum, right? Is that nothing new goes in without an already established IP. So I started thinking about that. What could go in there? I was talking to Tammy about it, and Paige, and we were trying to come up with, you know, their thing was coming up with something that had a good soundtrack. I was trying to just come up with a good IP. It doesn't, you know, like back to the bangers thing, it doesn't have to be a big deal e-ticket attraction. It just has to be something fun and exciting and something that you want to go do. Um, and so, you know, they thought a Rapunzel attraction. They thought something with Moana. Their first thought was Zootopia or Inside Out. All great ideas, but I kind of went back to what Hollywood Studios has now become, and that is a park that takes you inside the movie. It's not a working studio. It has nothing to do with what it was originally built to be anymore. It's taking you to be a part of the story. So, being a Muppet fan as I am, I started thinking Muppets. How about a Muppets dark ride that goes back to the MGM roots, the Great Muppet Movie Ride? Now I can't take full credit for this even though it's something that I did kind of come up on with my own, but I think it was something that was stuck in the back of my head, and I'm just kind of pulling it out. I know this is something that had been thrown around. I think it may have even been an idea that they wanted to have as part of the original MGM when it first opened. Um, and it just never happened because of the death of Jim Henson. But my idea is a dark ride, and we're going to open with the opening from the Muppet Show. Let's light the lights. Let's get everybody up in their windows on that big stage, right? As you go by. And then we're going to go into the Muppet movie, Rainbow Connection. Give me some of that. And we'll slide right into the Muppet Movie Caper. There is a show number in the middle where Miss Piggy is synchronized swimming in this, like, I don't know, glitzy thing. We got to have that. We got to have that where she's like doing her Miss Piggy thing, right? um and then we're going to bring in the Christmas Carol, we're going to bring in Treasure Island, maybe even the Oz movie we got to get in there, we'll bring all this through, but the big finale, because the whole storyline that's going to thread all of this together is from the Muppets, the Jason Segel movie that came out about 10 years ago. We're gonna use that as our main storyline. We're getting the gang back together, right? That's always the story that they like to do in these movies, is we got to get the gang back together. So that's what we're gonna do, is that we're gonna go through the timeline of these shows and movies, and the big finale is from the Muppets, where they get the stage show put together and they're out in that street and everyone is there supporting the Muppets, and it's this big thing. I'm tearing up just talking about it right now. So the end of that movie was just great, and I think coming into that final scene, um, filling it, I feel like that's going to be an amazing dark ride to put together for the Muppets. And this is a ride that's going to do justice to the Muppets. This is something that Jason Segel went out and he made that movie to bring the Muppets back into the forefront, right? He did it, and they came to him and said, "Oh, let's do a sequel." And he said, "No, I did what I wanted to do. I'm done." And then they couldn't find anybody to do anything with the Muppets again. And here is something that we can put together, that anytime an Imagineer or somebody at Disney wants to do something with the Muppets, they can go to this ride and be like, look at this. Here's the entire history of the Muppets. This is what they're all about. And this is why the fans love them. And we're going to put it all into this ride, and we're going to be able to just every time you go to it, the fans are going to love it. And it's going to not be an e-ticket necessarily, but it's going to be popular. And it's, being a dark ride, I'm thinking Omni Mover, something that's just a people eater, that's get people through there like crazy, so that we can build more capacity into that park and shorten some of the lines at some of these other things that are so hard to get on. And we can, I'm thinking Muppet Mayhem. I'm just getting so excited right now. I'm thinking Muppet Mayhem has to have something in there, because that show was terrific, and so many people are upset now that that's been shut off and canceled. And I think it would be great to have that in there. I don't think that we need to go beyond the size that is just Indiana Jones to put in that dark ride, but we will have to just bulldoze it and start from the ground and dirt and build it up. But I think the Great Muppet Movie Ride is something that we need at Hollywood Studios. It'll put you into the story like they want, like that's the whole idea of Hollywood Studios. So that's where I'm headed. What do you think?
So to give people kind of a background on this whole story, so I do think that this idea was kind of thrown around when they were trying to retheme the Great Movie Ride. But it came from another idea that they had for fixing another ride out at California Adventure, which was like what was the official name of this? Like the limo ride,
Superstar limo. Yeah.
Superstar limo. And basically, what was going to happen was, they were going to take Superstar limo and turn it into Muppets. But what was going to be happening was, as you go through it, the Superstar limo was going to slowly turn into like a Muppets ride, and they were going to show the Muppets fixing Superstar limo and making jokes like, "Oh my god, this is terrible," and like poking fun at what the ride was at that point. So I think that was the first time that they were thinking about putting Muppets into a ride like that. And then when they needed to do something with Hollywood Studios and it's shit like this. What's the ride called? I can't grab it.
I don't know where you're going.
The ride at Hollywood Studios.
Indiana Jones.
No,
Great movie ride.
that one. With I don't even know where I was now. But with Great Movie Ride, they were going to have Muppets in it, and so I think that's kind of like that was the jumping off point, was Superstar Limo. But yeah, I think in general, this sounds like a terrific ride. I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a second, though. Are the Muppets popular enough now? I think it. I mean, and and this is coming from a Muppets fan. Like, I 100% am a Muppets fan, but given the types of IPs that they're looking for like developing new rides, I just don't think Muppets is tough enough to like kind of like deserve a ride like that. Not that they don't deserve a ride like that. Like Muppets 100%, like they deserve a decent ride. But when they're trying to retheme things, I feel like it's always kind of like the more flashy, like more current, like Spider-Man and Marvel and all this stuff. When they're trying to retheme these rides, I'm just wondering if Muppets is relevant enough right now.
I can see that argument, and I think that, had they done this right after the Muppets had come out, I think it would have had really good staying power. Following a canceled show on Disney Plus, it's kind of hard to sell it. But I hope from my excitement that everyone wants to do it. It's I guess, I always kind of dive into the nostalgia, and I dive into the things that I enjoy, and I've just always yearned for Disney to do more with the Muppets. And and it's why I haven't really said a whole lot, but it was very apparent when they came out with Muppets Most Wanted. They have no idea what they're doing with the Muppets. They have no idea. And they have such great talent in those puppeteers. And this last TV show, The Muppets Mayhem, it was really shown because Bill Beretta, one of the puppeteers, it was his idea. And I was reading the Disney 23 magazine from being part of the D23, and they had a story about the TV show. It was really interesting that Bill Beretta came up with this idea for the Mayhem band to have a show. And the guy's name is escaping me. I can't remember what he's from even, but there was another guy that's had some success. I want to say he's part of the Blackish TV series, that whole, the Blackish and Grownish or whatever, I don't know what they all are, but um I want to say he was from that, and he separately had come up with an idea, and they're like, well, let's get these two together, and they came up with Muppet Mayhem, which was a lot of fun. um but that goes to show, like, use the people you have that know these IPs. And I think hopefully the reason that the show got canceled, I hope, is that it's all money based right now, and the idea of just trying to get Disney Plus profitable, and that they'll come back to Muppet Mayhem at some point. Um, but until then, I think you're right. I don't think there's enough going on for the Muppets to warrant a ride. But I still want it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like so it makes me think kind of like what's another huge IP that Disney has that you think would like make that area explode? Like what do you think is relevant enough and has enough potential to kind of like be a ride back there? And I think with you talking dark ride, because something that actually came to my mind was, hey, they could keep the bleachers there and turn that into like an Encanto show. But then it's like there are so many shows at that park already. But well, when you think about it, then you're swapping a show for a show. So I guess it's like you wouldn't really be adding shows. Um, but yeah, like that was something that came to my mind, was like an Encanto show, and you could have like the house, and the house could be doing all of these like different things, and then the house could actually like open up to like the middle of the house, so like you could have scenes in there too. But that was something that like kind of came to my mind if we're talking like a show and like music and something that's really relevant and that people already enjoy, that like it's already been a hit, like you can throw it into the parks. And I don't think, I mean, other than the rumors that I've heard that Dino Land was going to become like Encanto, um I don't think there's really anything Encanto except for the meet and greet um in the parks.
Right. And I think Encanto is a great idea. Um, I think a show there would be really, really good. It's been a few years, but it's probably their last big movie, right? Like
Yeah.
they haven't had too many hits recently. And Encanto is kind of an anomaly, I think, because of how it didn't get big until it hit Disney Plus. But definitely something that is yearning for an attraction. I think a show there would be a lot of fun. Um, as you were saying, what else to put in there? I mentioned it earlier, like Moana or Rapunzel. I think Rapunzel has a really, really good following and could sustain something there. I would love to see a way that I can sit on a boat in a lake and have all those lanterns start rising up around me.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And I've always thought that that little corner of Magic Kingdom is really cool. Like I honestly, when I saw that in um the preview artwork, when that area was first coming out, I was like, cool, there's gonna be like a Tangled section, and there'd probably be like a Tangled ride, but like it ended up just being bathrooms, which are really good bathrooms, don't get me wrong, but they're just bathrooms. And so yeah, that was something that I did get excited about back in the day, which I think could like hold its own as like its own thing out at Hollywood Studios. And yeah, like there's a lot of really cool um, moments in that movie that you could turn into like a really fun dark ride.
Totally agree. Yeah, and there's so many people that feel like Rapunzel deserves more than she gets, and so yeah, I think that'd be great. I was sitting here thinking about Moana. she was very popular for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but all they've ever done with her is given her a meet and greet.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen much more than that, and I may be wondering if her time has passed. Um,
Well, I mean,
I-
I think about that stuff a lot with certain things. Um, one of the things that I've noticed that with is there is a um well, there used to be that meet and greet with Merida. That's gone now. And then there was also a song in Happily Ever After that is from that movie. Um, so it's like I've thought that for a while with that type of IP that like okay like maybe this stuff is going away. But Disney for some reason just kind of always brings some of that stuff back like their successful IP. Um, and for the most part in the parks like nobody I mean nobody really cares like it's people enjoy it people remember it so and I feel like Moana is um was successful enough and was a good enough movie that um I feel like it could hold up plus um there's also that section in Phantasmic that has Moana and I feel like people go nuts when she
yeah,
sings like "I am Moana," and like people lose their minds I mean,
yeah,
it's a wonderful show, and that's probably why people are losing their minds. But people love that part. So I feel like there's the love for Moana still kind of in there, and I feel like, and it would also be cool. Well, and they also like just did that Moana Way of Water in Epcot. Um, and so it'd be interesting to see like if it was a dark ride or even if it was just like either like a show or a walkthrough attraction like they just did what they could do to like manipulate water. I think that would be kind of cool. Like and especially if it was like a dark ride and like the different things that they could make look like water and stuff like that. I think that'd be cool.
that would be really cool. It's funny that we've sat here debating whether the IP is strong enough or matters enough to be put into a park, and then we've got Tron.
I know. Well, and the funny thing about Tron and this I feel so there's Tron and then there's Avatar. These are two attractions that have completely superseded their IP. Like what their IP was, they have gone way past. Like people will go to Avatar Land and be like, "This is amazing. This is so cool," and not be fans or even really know much of that about those movies at all. They just know that like they're at this amazing place in this park that looks so cool that like they're just experiencing it and but it has like for them it has nothing to do with the movies.
Hmm.
I feel it's the same thing about Tron where it's like it's just a really cool ride with a really cool theme and it's like whether or not people remember the movie or like are big fans of the movie is kind of irrelevant now at this point because the ride was so groundbreaking and it was so cool that it's just completely like superseded um like the need for that IP. Like the IP now is Tron the ride. So
That's true, and I think that might be the closest thing we have to an original idea then. You know, Walt always had his kind of original ideas, the pirates, the haunted mansion type of thing, and we don't get that much anymore. It's always tied to an IP, but when you look at Tron and know that it's coming from a movie that was made in the 70s, with, it did have a sequel that didn't really grab people too much. I am not part of that fandom. I've tried. Um, I've started the movie and thought I was lost right away, right at the beginning. But it's not something that I go, I need to get to Disney World because now they have Tron.
yeah.
I'm I don't find myself worrying about that. Um, so when I say, and now we have Tron, like that, I think that was an easy win for them because they already had something established in another country that they could just pick up and bring here,
Mhm.
albeit 6 years later. But um, they did that. So I think part of, and you kind of said it yourself too, like they're good at bringing things into the parks and making it something. So Moana, like the Journey of Water is pretty popular. You know, bringing in a dark ride around that could work. They still have Muppet Vision running. They can do Muppets. They can do, they could do something new with Cars. Uh I don't know. I think that there's a world of possibility to put there. I think we've come up with some really great ideas. I don't know that they need to be like super relevant though.
Yeah, and that makes me think, Brian. So we've talked IP this entire time. What's let's try to think as Imagineers now, and let's try to think about Imagineers as if we're 90s Imagineers. The Imagineers that weren't having to use IP constantly. And see like what, like if we were Imagineers and we weren't going to use IP, what would we put back there? Like what would be a fun adventure that people might want to do that's loosely involved in movies, I guess, because it's going in Hollywood studios.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like Blue Sky. Like what's something that you think would make a great attraction?
That's I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that right now.
It's really hard actually now.
It is.
It's pretty difficult. It's amazing kind of what these Imagineers come up with, and how I guess it's in thinking this way, thinking of like what would be cool. Um, it's so hard to kind of like have a big idea that's nice and small and fits in a box. Like something that you can have all of this detail with, but that is nice and co- concrete and isolated to like one thing. Like I love to think about Tower Terror. It's an old, like the story is, it's basically a ghost story. The back in the 40s or whatever, there was this terrible accident that killed all these people, um, and now you are in the tower and you're in the elevator. Um, and that's like it's like how did people? I mean, it's funny. I say this now. They used IP. They they used what was that TV show
Twilight
called?
Zone.
Twilight
Yeah.
Zone Tower of Terror. So it's like they did use IP. Um, but like I don't know. I feel like that's one of the great times that Imagineers really kind of like didn't have to use IP all that much to make something great.
That is something that they did use IP, but I think the story was there before they decided to pull in Twilight Zone. The history there is a little fuzzy for me. I was kind of young
It
yet,
was
but
well, it started as a Mel Brooks. It was supposed to be like a funny Mel Brooks, um, like dark ride or something like that, or like drop a ride that had Mel Brooks stuff in it. So they had the hotel and Mel Brooks, and then after they couldn't use Mel Brooks stuff, then they, I think they came up with their own story. Like I think they came up with the story, um, and put
oh,
that all together,
sure.
and then put Twilight Zone or Twilight Zone into the idea.
Yeah. They and well, anyway, as you were talking about all that, it was me thinking about what would you want to put people into, um cuz it's all about being in the movie. And I started thinking about emotions, and for whatever reason fear was one that kind of stuck out. We do kind of have that with the Tower of Terror already, but what if we threw somebody into a ride that plays with fears? I'm not Imagineer, so this idea is not fully formed. But um, it's something where, like, maybe it's another dark ride, but we're playing with fears and we're doing, like, I've got the Bates Motel in my head. And I've got, kind of the shower scene from there, like, kind of people getting placed inside of those scenes through this dark ride. But there we're still playing with IP. I don't know if we'd be able to do something where we aren't using the IP, but we have some of those types of horror movie ideas going on.
Well,
Like the car won't start. Like that type of thing.
well, and I think given how difficult it might be to get some of those IPs, I think they'd have to do workarounds with some stuff like that, and they've done that before with um, the Alien ride that they had at Magic Kingdom. The terrifying, speaking of frightening things, the terrifying Alien Adventure. Um, uh, I think that's technically a show, but I mean that was a thing where they couldn't get actually. I think they did get the rights to the movie Alien.
They did not.
Okay.
It was being built with the idea that they were going to get it, and it fell apart. So when you were talking about the Mel Brooks thing, it's the same exact idea where they were coming up with these rides based on an IP, and then they weren't able to get the license or the deal fell through or something like that. And so Alien, I loved the extraterrestrial. I so we were talking about this earlier tonight. This was an experience, and if you've never heard of it, this is the predecessor to Stitch's Great Escape. And you would go in and you would be in a theater in the round pretty much. And you were told, like, you were going in and they were going to be doing I'm trying to remember the beginning of it. There was an experiment that they were going to be bringing an alien into the room, something like that.
Mhm.
It was this cute little alien, yellow alien. And um the problem is that you would get in there and they would strap you in with a over the head harness, like the same type of thing that you put on yourself when you're on Rock and Roller Coaster, and you lock that in. And then, of course, as things do in every Disney ride, something goes wrong.
Oh
and,
no.
and this giant alien comes in, scary alien, just like you would think of from the Alien movie, comes in instead of the cute little thing and breaks out of the glass container that they had brought it into. And you feel it breathing on your neck, and you feel this spit from its mouth, like, dripping on you at one point. Or maybe it was even supposed to be blood dripping on you. I can't remember exactly what that was, but I just loved it, though. I thought it was great. I got to go on it a couple of times. But it was, like, kind of ahead of its time, because at the time it's like, this is not Disney. Like, this is way too much for Disney. And nowadays I think people would just eat it up.
Mhm.
So yeah, like, that was one of those, another deal where they were building something based on the IP, so they had an idea, but they lost what that IP was going to be, so they had to create a new story around it. And talking to Tom Thurdarson and to Topper and all that, they were given a space and they were told, here's what we would like to do, here's an idea of what we want to do. Now for Tom, like, he has recently done his own podcast. He started his own podcast, and he's done 7 episodes as part of that podcast where he's been talking about becoming an Imagineer. Definitely go check it out. It's called All Things Thor. It's so fun to listen to him um tell his story about being an Imagineer. And he was really into Jules Verne, and he was into the journey to the center of the earth type of thing, and that's where his idea came from. To build, it's loosely, it's not totally the whole story, but he kind of was able to do all that on his own and come up with all these creatures and stuff. So there's a lot of, at least when you said 90s Imagineer, like there was a lot of freedom there to go and build what you wanted to build and come up with the story you wanted to tell. And maybe the IP piece, well, we all know the IP piece is money driven at this point. Like they know that the ride is going to then bring people in, instead of just putting something out there for millions of dollars and hoping people like it, right?
Mhm.
At least there's something there saying, oh, I get to go be a part of that movie now. Whereas they're also taking their rides and turning them into movies, so that there's that correlation as well. So I've just talked in circles, and I don't know that I've really made a point. But I guess the biggest point of all of that is maybe not to get hung up on the idea of having to use IP, but more that the IP can really drive a good idea just as much as not having the IP.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of realized how difficult it is to just sit down. And honestly, when it comes to like putting together a ride, it's probably just as hard as putting together, like if you're doing a ride from scratch, probably just as difficult as like, okay, what kind of movie do we want to do? Like
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
basically putting together a movie. So
Right.
it's a lot easier to kind of have that starting point already, and then you jump off from there.
That's so true. But why don't you guys come out and give us your ideas? What would you do with the space that is Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular? What would you like to see put there? What could be a people eater or something that gains the capacity in Hollywood studios? We want to know what you're thinking, what you'd love to see there. Come on out to Facebook and Instagram. We are at Miles from Main Street, or find us on our website, www.milesfrommainsT.com.
But like we always say, some live close,
But others don't.
so let's talk about it. We'll see you next time on Miles from Main Street.